English translation 79th contact. Saturday, 16th of July, 1977, Fin 37 HRs.
Gosh, girl, this is a surprise. That you are taking me right out of the office. I was about to start writing to get some letters done. But girl, I am so happy to finally see you again. It has been so long since we last saw each other, about 4 months. Where have you been for so long, and what have you done? You know, we all waited very longingly for you and missed you very much.
This is a very dear greeting. I offer you my thanks for it. I am also very happy that I can be here again because I feel very connected with all of you. The time was very long for me, but I had to do this and be absent. The reason lies in the fact that I certainly could not have stayed out of your concerns, thus I would have been helpful to you in various things, even though I should not have been. Through all the time that we are now in contact with each other, I have taken such an interest in all your and others' concerns that a very strong connection has developed out of it, out of which I would have acted differently in certain things than I was promised. You can see from this that I and my people, too, are only pure human life forms, which under certain conditions have difficulty in following certain things. It was precisely in this case that I could not determine with certainty beforehand whether I would fit in with the given rules and act according to the given advice of the High Council, because the attachment to you and your group had become too pronounced in me, which is why I found it more responsible to remove myself from the immediate area of your presence in order to not undertake any actions for your benefit, either unthinkingly or guided by connecting feelings and other impulses, which I should not do for your own good and progress. As you know, I should not and must not interfere directly in your evolutionary work for the sake of your self-development of these things. This also includes all that manual activity that is connected with the building of your center. So as not to interfere carelessly and out of a willingness to help in your concerns to be dealt with by yourselves, I removed myself from your surroundings and reach. But I was not inactive in your affairs during that time, for I explored many important things for you, but it is still too early to talk about them at this time. Only in the course of time and little by little will I be able to give details, at those times when the corresponding data and insights will serve you and be of an evolutionary nature. To explore these things, I stayed in various future epochs, after which I have become able to discern certain details of the future of all core group members, which are worth knowing and necessary to know, but which, as personal concerns of each individual member, must also be preserved as such without naming them to third parties. This is necessary for many reasons of security, but also with regard to the maintenance of peace in the group itself, because thoughts of envy, betrayal, and egoism have not yet been completely eliminated, and some of them still appear in very strong form in constant succession. The researched details for the individual core group members are to be handled in such a manner that when they are named they are written down for those concerned, but are only knowingly taken up by them. When they are mentioned, it should be the case that you should record the given facts in writing in the usual form, but then do not hand them over, but only hand them over to the members in detail in your presence for study, after which you should keep them again. No copies or duplicates should be made of the original document, because only in this manner can the danger of distribution to third parties be avoided. From now on, the individuals themselves must then ensure that they do not knowingly or unknowingly make any statements or results about the matters that have come to their attention. For yourself, the task will be to study in detail the individual concerns of the details for the core group members to be mentioned step by step, and to orientate yourself as to what will require many more conversations with my father and with me in the future, for which, however, no contact reports are to be prepared. In the future, a new task will require your attention, which you have already offered to fulfill in the past, namely the predictions for the current years, which I have made for you in the last 2 years, at least partially, since you have already decisively contributed your thoughts and your researched results to the last annual prediction, without, however, making this known in your group. It would have been correct if you had drawn the attention of the group members to this and had informed them that little more than 2/3 of the yearly predictions for the year 1977 came from your foresight and probability calculations, and that only the minimal remainder in this respect, as well as the statements for the further future, arose from my own work. You knowingly concealed from everyone that we had an unrecorded conversation about this, and that I agreed to make the predictions on my behalf if you would later disclose the true facts to your group members. But you did not do this, although you declared at that time that you would do this if you thought the time was given, namely, if you recognized the correctness of your calculations and researches into the future. Over the interim of my absence, this has certainly become a reality, but you have not yet acted according to your given word, which is incomprehensible to me in any form, since I have never before, during, and also not before our acquaintance, been able to determine that you turn a given word into brokenness. So I can only imagine that you have fallen into oblivion about this or that for some reason you do not yet find the time as given.
The latter was the case, girl. But by mentioning the actual facts, you have now put a spoke in my wheel. Because if the contact report appears, everyone will now be informed by it. I
can withhold my words in this regard, and not pass them on to you for the report, if that is what you want. But it would be important for me to know what your reasons are for remaining silent about this important matter.
So far, the manual work that has been and still is being carried out has not allowed me to devote myself in detail to all members and to the spiritual teaching, and thus to all the necessary explanations in the manner that should be the case in order to be able to explain the importance of the predictions. This is why different group members need a tremendous amount of explanation and knowledge in order to come out of a near stagnation of consciousness again, into which they have fallen through the hunger for learning of the last months, because I could no longer serve them in any wise with regard to the mediation and explanation of spiritual concerns and spiritual knowledge, because I was simply too much occupied by the manual activity and much more, that I simply had no more time left for it, and that I lacked every possibility.
I know that. Father Ketzel and Manara informed me about it. According to your words, I find your behavior understandable, according to which I am willing to skip my statements when submitting the report, if you really want me to. For my part, however, I think that your secret, which you have been keeping until now, can be uncovered at this point in time, because now is definitely the best time for it. I have spent the last 2 days intensively endeavoring to examine individual group members and found that some of them are very approachable for certain recognition values right now, precisely because they had to languish so long in imparting knowledge of spiritual concerns. If, however, your considerations should nevertheless result in you having to wait with the mentioning of the given facts due to a lack of time and necessary explanations, then this is quite understandable and acceptable to me.
I would prefer to wait until the time when everything can take its usual course again.
And when should that be according to your calculation?
At the beginning of November.
A very long time yet, if I grasp things according to earthly conditions.
Certainly.
Your calculation intersects with the time of the starting up of the center.
Exactly, because only from this point on do I find enough time again to be able to devote myself fully and completely to all aspects of the spiritual teaching and the writing of articles and books.
But then also consider the task that you yourself should be concerned about the creation of a suitable book with regard to our contacts.
I have already thought about that. I simply have to divide my time accordingly. By the way, I have already started this work, and I will also be able to catch up with my neglected work bit by bit.
Then I will respond to your wish.
No, I assume, after you have given your reasons for doing so, that I will leave everything as it is now, without you having to leave out your words in the report. Somehow I will be able to cope with it.
As you like. But be aware that the next predictions are to be given entirely from your side.
You already said that. I just wonder what % of the predictions to be made correspond to reality and what benefits they bring. It worries me a bit, because if I miss too much, then I look ridiculous and they will call me a charlatan.
Such misgivings about you are very strange to me. Besides, almost all the predictions you made for this year have already come true, without any mistakes so far. Think only once of the most basic things, since your calculations fully coincide with the current and past events, which are mainly the unusual climate changes, the unusual snowfalls and rainfalls, the oil catastrophes and oil tanker ruptures, then also the events about the latest terrible weapon of destruction of the Americans, as well as the prediction about the various volcanic eruptions, the rapid prevalence of criminality, family murders, and many other things, which you have called, partly by probability calculations and partly by foresight, in the form of future vision with absolute correctness.
Still, girl, I just have concerns.
Even if you are wanting in certain things, this does not justify a distrust of you or even an accusation of charlatanry.
It is easy for you to talk, because you do not have to live directly with us Earthlings, who very often try to twist a rope for vain reasons. Especially I stand thereby almost like an exhibit whereby alone already the contact with you and yours gives extremely much cause for it. What will it be like when I suddenly make yearly predictions in my name? Surely they will accuse me of clairvoyance, and that means that I will appear even more implausible than it is already the case in would-be claustrophobic circles. These would-be intelligence beasts will then be the first to shout out terseness and murder, which is certainly not absolutely necessary, is it not?
You are mistaken. Because such action from these sides only serves our cause, because the greater and more vicious the anti-propaganda against you and your group and your contacts with us becomes, the greater are the positive successes which you should know from your own experience. Somehow you seem to be depressed because never before has your thinking been of this form. Your fighting spirit seems to be stricken, for which I can only find the reason in the fact that I was absent for so long.
You are probably right about that too, because that time was also quite a burden to me. I am sorry if I have now given the impression that I no longer want to fight in the usual way. There have simply risen in me quiet doubts about the correctness of things if I announce predictions in my name. Of course you are right with your explanation, because that is the case. I have experienced that often enough. Also with Jacob, Bertossi, and Ahrens, through whose help we first came to our center, even if these jerks just wanted to prevent that.
As other personalities, you have already gathered countless experiences with this in earlier millennia and have never faltered as a different person. The fact that this is to be the case for the first time, however, is probably due to your physical and psychological condition, for I see that the reason lies not only in my absence, but also, and to a very significant degree, in your present state of health. Your face is marked by pain and flares of fever. What ailments are you suffering with?
It is not worth mentioning.
Sit down here.
For what?
Through this apparatus, I will fathom what ailment has befallen you.
That is not necessary, because I know well enough myself what I am lacking. I only poisoned myself with a little sausage, which all of us know. That is why they have been nagging me all the time and thought I should go to the doctor. But it really is not that bad, because I am always probing around a bit in order to help myself. It goes halfway that way and I can at least smoke it out.
Your constant trivialization is well known to me, and the expressions in your facial features speak completely different things than your explanations say. Now sit here.
If it is absolute.
You shall not contradict, but sit yourself here.
Okay, I am already doing it. Are you satisfied now?
Sure, that is how you sit. I thought so. You are completely exhausted, and besides, you seem to have not eaten for days.
It will not be that bad, and how could I eat if I was always feeling lousy?
So, yes, your poisoning is not of an easy nature, but already quite serious. As the apparatus here shows, your blood has already been poisoned, and certain cells of the brain have also been affected, which makes your suddenly pessimistic mood explainable.
I say that is quite normal for meat poisoning.
It is not that natural because, as I see here, it is not a common poisoning, but a far more serious infection from meat parasites.
You mean they are...
Certainly, so I will do what I have to do about it. Give me your arm. So yes, that is good.
What kind of thing is that?
A parasite neutralizer, as Earth humans would say. This apparatus automatically neutralizes all pathogenic or life-threatening parasites in the physical areas of a human life form as soon as this colorless surface comes into contact with the surface of the skin, as it does right now. The time of neutralization is less than 6 seconds for an entire human body, whereby the neutralizer automatically adjusts in a fraction of a second to the physical condition and constitution of the human life form concerned. In the end, the apparatus neutralizes all damage caused by the parasites, or they are neutralized if they are of any material or any other substantial or gaseous nature which has just happened to you, so you are not poisoned.
That is great. I actually feel squeaky good again. But tell me, what do you actually mean by parasites in case of illness or even poisoning?
This includes all kinds of bacilli, viruses, microbes, and other pathogens whose existence is still unknown to earthly science in many cases, but of which several will be discovered in the course of the next decades when new diseases and epidemics appear and are researched.
Aha! Do Salmonella and other pack animals also belong to it?
Sure, but also new pathogens and new diseases and epidemics.
Good. While we are at it. You know that we have been doing a lot of transplants here on Earth for a few years now. With each of these operations, however, there is always the danger that the patient will only survive for a short time. This is because the foreign transplants are repelled by the body, which is why the body is treated with medication, etc., to such an extent that all antibodies and defense organs in the human body are rendered inoperative, which of course has the consequence that the body becomes highly susceptible to infections, etc., which leads to the death of the patient a short time after the transplantation, at least at present. I now have the question whether it is actually not possible to carry out a transplantation with good or even the best success without the defensive substances and organs in the human body being rendered inoperative. If this is possible, can or may you then tell me what science has to do to be successful?
If you had asked this question 3 months ago, I would not have been allowed to answer it. Recently, however, nothing has stood in the way of answering this question, which is why I can give you as much information about it as I am allowed to. If a transplant is to be successful, then relatively little is required, namely a simple serum, a gene combination, which I am not allowed to describe in more detail. Various earthly scientists researching this field have already found this serum and used it in animal experiments for tests. They name the product they produce antigen serum, which is made from very specific substances from those animals which may later supply the transplants. However, this serum must already be delivered to the fetus in the womb, after which the fetus immunizes itself by developing the relevant serum substances of the animals in cooperation with the fetus's own substances in such a form that the substances build up in commonality and become transplant-friendly. the foreign substances that build up program certain control centers of very specific cells, so these become known through the antigen serum supplied to them at an early stage, whereby they later recognize transplants of those animals as their own property from those substances contained in the serum. The exact same process takes place when the serum is produced from certain substances of another human life form.
That sounds very simple, but there is still a lot of knowledge and ignorance of our scientists behind this step.
Since the time is ripe, they should stop their experiments and put everything into practice, because they already know enough to save valuable human life from premature death. Your science should take this step now, because it is evolutionary, even if you will later deviate from it again, because better and further ways will open up, and because the realization will arise that the fluidal powers inherent in transplants are harmful in the long run and influence the carriers of transplants positively or negatively depending on their value and their power. With the human life form, no matter which race it belongs to, only the human species is important. It is the highest physical form of life with very specific, special characteristics that are not found in animal or floral life. As an autonomous small world, everything is regarded as an intruder and foreign body to the human life form in the case of foreign transplants, etc. What is right for this form alone are organ and protoplasm forms, which are created or cultivated from the existing life form itself on the basis of the individual coordination of each individual life form. This basically means genetic manipulation or genetic engineering, which is already being used in part on the Earth today and which could bring success. But for inexplicable reasons, this step is not yet taken openly, which will entail that at a later time resistance will be raised against it by the unreasonable and progress-inhibiting ones, when the development will already have progressed further, because by then the Earth human will have become even more effeminate and even more false human, and indeed, already in only 2 decades. But genetic engineering has been running for a long time in terms of food modification, etc., secretly.
I just barely keep up with your explanation, but that is all it takes.
That is not so important either, because the Earth human will go his or her way, one way or the other, because he or she has already predetermined that in the masses.
I know that. We are all clear about that. So there is no need for any further discussion about it.
Sure, I also have more important things to explain to you, namely regarding all your work and the actual meaning of the whole. First of all, I would like to express my deep thanks and praise for all the commitment and efforts of the honest and diligent group members who made the creation of your center possible. In the beginning, it was very difficult and unusual for everyone to get involved in these continuous forms, in both the financial and the manual part. In the course of time, however, as the records of our recorders have shown, everything has changed very much for the better, so that today, with very few exceptions, everything is progressing extremely well. Sure, it was very difficult for me and all others to understand all your actions and thoughts and also all the appearing impulses, etc., but we realized that the beginning of the whole could not be different and that it corresponds to the usual rules of earthly behavior. It was not easy for all of us to recognize this, because these kinds of manner of thinking and acting were foreign to us in every respect and therefore incomprehensible, which is why we all first had to accustom ourselves to these matters in order to be able to understand you in this respect. Since we now understand this aspect of your earthly modes of life, however, we are in a position to recognize and appreciate it accordingly, which is why I express my gratitude to all of you by expressing my joy. This is for the interests of all those things which are in the financial and manual area of your work. The situation is different with certain other things that I am unfortunately not in a position to circumvent and leave unspoken, which is why I would like to discuss them here. In reference to the actual center, unfortunately, some of the unwilling and treacherous group members have not kept silent about the fact that no details should become expressed. A few have talked about it with outsiders, and unfortunately have also slanderously and falsely distorted certain details. More attention should be paid to this in the future, for it is important that no further false information is disseminated about it. As our apparatus is recorded, the sounding of certain twisted and false details in certain circles has already given rise to wild speculation, which has led to the formation of a loose group, the purpose of which is the theft of not significant things, fortunately, from the center. So, be careful to secure and guard the whole thing in the future. This could have been prevented by silence, which is not the case now. However, by the recklessness and also by the betrayal of certain group members, as well as by their lies and slander, and their still prevailing doubts about the value of the center. At least this is the case with individual treacherous members. Unfortunately, only a very few are really clear about the purpose and value of the center and the mission, which is why corresponding thoughts are rife in them, and they work very diligently and endeavor to complete everything at the prescribed time. Particular attention should be paid by those group members to curb and control their malignant and negating thoughts, who, despite their treacherous actions, already have a relatively great knowledge of the spiritual teaching, but for very flimsy and selfish as well as egotistical reasons, and in the misunderstanding of certain situations of action, etc., and for reasons of misjudgment of other members of the group, have become intellectually and even with great thoughtlessness verbally abusive, thereby causing discontent and bringing doubts about the truth of the creation into creation.
I know it really is so, girl, but I do not think you can blame them, because everyone, no matter who they are, must first recognize and learn certain things of the truth. But how should they have the knowledge if they do not first make mistakes in order to be able to recognize the damage, or simply the wrong from their own experience, after which they only then become aware?
Sure, that is correct, which is why my words are not reproachfully said, but explaining and advising according to which the erring ones can recognize themselves in their faulty actions and can develop higher in self-instruction. But it may be as it is proper for you to say that you feed poisonous viper breeding on your bosom, which will bite and poison you in order to destroy your work or even to kill you.
Then I am reassured. I thought so because it sounded like a reprimand. But your last words make me think. Maybe you are right about that. But I still cannot condemn the misguided ones, which you do not do either, can I?
I have just explained to you that this is not the case.
Exactly, precisely.
You are funny again, but keep listening to what I have to explain. The forms of humanity among these various group members sometimes leave much to be desired in certain respects, for they often take sides, which leads to strife and untruth in interaction with others. I would like to advise you that these rather low forms of addiction to prestige, egoism and wanting to be more, etc., are to be dismantled by the erring ones in a controlled manner. For otherwise discord and resentment will very quickly become destructive, which would make it impossible for a larger group to live together once and for all. I shall send you the corresponding rules of order, which will be necessary to follow when the time comes, when the advice of the High Council has been worked out and drawn up. They are rules of order which take much more time to prepare than my father had assumed. This was because the things and concerns about the psyche, the feelings and thought reactions as well as the actions of the individual are so confused that everything has to be registered and analyzed again, which will happen again over 3 months. This has to be the case because many different changed situations have resulted in completely new perspectives of judgment, which can only be analyzed through a new registration over a longer period of time.
Gosh, child, then we can wait a long time.
Sure, but unfortunately that cannot be changed.
When do you think it will be so far?
At the earliest in the month of November.
Yikes, it cannot work before?
Unfortunately, no, rather it can take some time longer.
Then all that remains is to wait.
Sure, but keep listening to what I have to say. Some of the group members are also unclear about certain things about you as a person, which is why they should try to be clear about this. This is necessary because certain future work and events require that more trust be placed in you and your actions. But this can truly only happen if one endeavors to see and know you in the light of your mission. You may live in the earthly world of the present time, but that does not mean that you are also at home in this world, which many have not yet recognized and which, on the other hand, often places a heavy burden on you. I know very well how strange you feel on the earth, yet a very strong bond with your family and group members often makes you forget this, because you reject this burden, because you have no use for it. However, you are still not able to deceive yourself, so that being alone always and constantly remains in your consciousness and burdens you. You have chosen this as it was the case in earlier times, that is clear to me, but all those around you should be aware that you carry this heavy burden for them and all other people, which is why they should be more open-minded and devoted to you, but which requires that they make more efforts to see you as you really are, namely that you take up your task without consideration for yourself. And since you do not show consideration for yourself, you should have a necessary love of all that frees you from the burden of being alone. And when I speak here of an inconsideration for yourself, then I mean the point of loneliness that surrounds you because you can only be active in instruction among the earth humans, but not learn because your knowledge and ability in the matters of the spirit are far too highly developed for you to find an instructive interlocutor. At present, there is not even an earth human who could understand or even grasp your thought forms in this regard, and it is precisely these things that push you into your inner loneliness in truth, which are so often so burdensome for you that everything weeps and rears up in your innermost being. It is better for all those who are able to cry openly to express their feelings in this manner, and thereby ease themselves. You, however, are denied this because you are only able to fulfill your mission if you are master of your feelings and other impulses. If you have learned to master them and thus become lonely, to overcome all your problems within yourself, deep within yourself, but which entailed that you lost the open crying over your own pain, which in turn had the consequence that the congestions began to discharge inwards through the crying deep inside you when the burden of loneliness becomes too great for you in each case. In this relationship, you would be given a lot of help if you were given more open-mindedness and tangible love by everyone.
You are talking about things you really should not talk about, girl, because I have to deal with this part of my life myself. So why should the others be burdened with as well? That is really not necessary. I have been carrying this burden for 40 years now, so I can carry it for the rest of my life.
You should be more cautious about your lifespan. Look, I cannot share your view, for you too are aligned with the creational laws and recommendations, therefore you too have your rights, like all other life forms. This means that you too should receive love and not be lonelier than necessary. Sure, your mission demands a lot from you, but certain concerns do not have to be, and can also be changed, if the necessary reason and understanding and feelings go the right way from all sides. I know that you never like to talk about these things and that you hide them from those around, but this is not of correctness, because there is always the danger that you will break down and not be able to complete your work, which is why I must officially talk about them so that those surrounding you finally grasp these concerns and facts clearly and give you the necessary help.
You treat me like a baby, damn it.
You are now irritated about my explanations, but if you think them over thoroughly, you will see that they are correct.
Damn, I know that well enough myself. But so far I have dealt with everything, and so I would have continued to do it without you pillorying me and my feelings, etc.
I do not understand your irritation, for I am only ready to help you, and I also think about all our tasks.
Oh, come on, let us leave that now. I know that you are right as always. But I will still think about it, and perhaps once again get some dreams in order to get my feelings going, so that they move again in somewhat brighter paths.
Sure, you should do that, and even more often because of dreams, because they bring you relief and a certain balance.
I just had not thought about it so far. Sometimes one is so burdened with completely different things from other humans that one has no more time to think about one's own problems.
That is right, at least on Earth at the present time, which will last for a long time to come. But you of all people should always remember that especially you should not do this in your time, because the human beings of the Earth do not hold by such things, but only burden themselves with their own things, and do not think of others. Therefore, when I explained earlier that this burden is at least the case now on the Earth, it refers only to those few people who have already reached a height in their state of evolution that exceeds the normal present norm. Therefore, if you want to live as a life form with your knowledge and abilities, which are very enormous for Earth humans, among them and with them, then you must not burden yourself so much in the problem-related sense for your environment that you fall prey to absolute selflessness. But you should do the same as the Earth humans and act according to their norms, even if it may be difficult for you. So that means that you should think more about yourself in every respect than you have done so far. If you do not follow this advice, then you put your whole mission into question, which you are aware of.
I know.
Then you should act according to my advice.
Okay, I will do it. My word on it.
Thank you.
Why then, you know very well that it is not you but me who is in the wrong and that I acted incorrectly.
I am grateful to you that you know this and that by your recognition you correct this mistake, which saves me a lot of worries.
Okay, things can change, but on the other hand it was the same in much earlier times as it is now in this life. If one wants to accomplish certain tasks and achieve certain goals, then one has to take a lot on oneself.
Sure, that is the truth. Nevertheless, it does not mean that one should destroy oneself on account of this.
Certainly not, but do not you think that we should finally end this tiresome topic?
Sure, but I had to bring it up once.
Well, then we can talk about other things now.
Sure, there is enough too.
Then shoot.
A very important issue is still to be clarified. Have you made and finished the necessary core pieces?
Of course, they have been well stored in the box for months.
I will have to take them with me at the end of September.
You once told me that you have to bring them to Era, is that right?
Sure, because they have to be purified to be freed of all the negative radiations and swinging waves.
And will you bring them back at the right time?
Sure, you will get them back in time.
Then I am reassured. But tell me, can you not at least give me some decisive details about the individual core group members in terms of living here and their division of tasks?
It is too early to talk about this, as we will have to wait for the results of the High Council. In any case, however, there will be various changes, as it has already become clear that certain factors do not appear in the same manner as they should for certain tasks. For example, unfortunately, there is also the fact that 2 or 3 members have proved incapable of living in a direct community, which is why it would be a good idea if they continued to live in separate places and at a certain distance from the center. However, I am not yet in a position to explain exactly what this is all about, as I do not yet have the necessary results from the High Council to do so, but the new registrations will also have to be submitted in the future,
I understand. But why should these 2 or 3 not fit into the community?
In one case, there is an extremely pronounced form of domination, paired with mistaken views, which would inevitably lead to disagreements in the community after a relatively short time, only to lead to aggressive statements and actions among each other shortly afterwards. In the second case, the circumstances are similar, but in addition, there is a very strong individuality of a pronounced revolutionary sense. Although this is the result of a complex of inferiority, it is extremely dangerous and destructive for a community of the kind envisaged. In the third case, things are such that ambitions appear in the respective group member which, like your earlier personalities, could elevate you to glory in earlier times, which must be avoided at all costs. Especially in this case, I would like to require you to be extremely careful yourself, because the behavior around you from this side is very pronounced. The seeing and hearing of non-existent things from this group member refers to this erroneous glorification of your person, since the clear and rational thinking has been switched off and given way to an imagination, as unfortunately was the case much earlier, when his consciousness was confused by the performance of your fireworks at the time of your persecution.
You speak of FK?
Sure, you know very well.
But I was not that sure, girl. Anyway, thank you very much for your tip. On the other hand, you do not have to worry so much, because you probably know that I act accordingly against it. Furthermore, not much can happen from this side in the form you mentioned, because for the member in question, the time of the group membership is already too limited for him to reach his confused goal.
You have researched this?
Of course. I had to know how to behave and what was behind all this talk.
Sure, you did a good job of that, but I can also dismiss my concern as unfounded.
You really did not have to worry about that.
I only know that now.
But now I am interested in something else, girl. What about these negative influences that have had such a strong effect on all of us? They had told me, I think it was your father, stupid word. I simply cannot remember who said it, that if everything takes its normal course, everything will be better from the month of July. Somehow I have had the feeling for days that a change is actually taking place, and that the previous negative is flattening out a bit.
Father and Ketzel informed me about the events. Sure, the situation is beginning to balance out and normalize, but this is mainly due to Ketzel's merits, because he has been trying for months to analyze things and put them in order. In the main, the Giza intelligences were guilty for the negative events. Realizing that your center lies very exactly on a magnetic radiation center, they were tempted to exploit this in their favor and bring forces into play that you could not cope with. As you yourself know very well, you too had all sorts of trouble and misery in order to cope with, or at the very least to reject, all kinds of hostilities. Even when it is a mystery to us how you could do that, this fact nevertheless remains.
At times it was also very crazy for us. Many simply cranked through, spun out, and went crazy. This affected the work and much more. What was left to me in the end? Only roaring around like a madman was still useful. Nevertheless, I do not want to ascribe all events to the Giza twerps and the swinging waves of the stars, because in many cases, the spinning out of the individual was because they did not know what to do with all the work that had to be done, within which was the factor that they were unaccustomed to this kind of work, which also helped with everything.
Sure, that is correct, but the analyses that have been made in the meantime have shown that these concerns have become more balanced and that these difficulties have largely come to a standstill. All the honest and mission-conscious members of the group have made a great effort, for which I want to express my gratitude to them. Nevertheless, I would like to remind everyone that the last time-consuming construction project still requires a great deal of work and a great deal of joint effort. As I have read from our registry recorders, there are those who are thinking about leaving the group or going on vacation, although their current involvement with you at this time is crucial to building everything necessary. But if this actually happens, that certain people at cross purposes or even all group members of honest form stay away from the necessary work during the whole holiday period, then the project will get into time pressure and would not be completed at the required time, which you may know. Therefore, I would like to take the liberty of interfering in your concerns and suggest to you that all of you give a part of your holiday time for the necessary work and work this time daily. You know that if the project is not finished by now, there will be irreparable changes that will shake all plans and damage individual core group members.
I know that, but people need their holidays too.
Sure, but the more important one certainly has a priority with everyone.
They will have to decide that for themselves.
But they should know that for some, time is very tight, if it would no longer be sufficient for what is required, which is why the project must be completed very precisely on time.
Of course, that is all very clear to me, but the decision is really not mine to make.
In this respect, too, you should be trusted more and your words more respected.
Do you have any idea what is sometimes thrown at my head?
Your thoughts probably refer specifically to Jacobus. His thoughts are familiar to me because very often they are unmistakable in a form that hurts me. He is very uncouth in his thinking, for he does not make an effort about this. Thus, his thoughts of unlove are often exposed when he talks of me or about me, which I often also have to take from our registry apparatuses. In particular, his speech of extreme inaccuracy is that we are unaccustomed to work and that we have good things to say because we do not have to do his work. It is very unfortunate to have to find this out because his thoughts and speaking clearly state that he does not strive for true thinking, and therefore is not able to recognize that we too have very hard days of work, and very often have to do our duties for several days without sleep, especially when, through the unreasonableness of individuals in your group, things are done which we have the duty to balance out. Especially with Jacobus we have our trouble, because by his stubbornness bordering non-thinking, he is extremely susceptible to all negative forces acting on him, which is why we have to constantly strive for him like no other to protect him from thoughtless and damaging actions. His world of thoughts therefore corresponds to very selfish and bad gratitude, which he is very much advised to remedy. Notwithstanding this, we must nevertheless thank him for his commitment and cooperation.
Well, what can I say about that?
You should tell him these things more often.
Gosh, what more should I do? Ask Herbert once again, or rush around in his thoughts. Then you will see how often I have already told Jacobus that.
Sure, I know that from Jacobus's thoughts. Nevertheless, you should do it more, even if he always reacts aggressively.
You know that too.
Sure, I explained to you that his thoughts reveal everything and go out from him unchecked.
Yes, of course. Okay, I will knock on his door again.
You should also try to make him understand that his expressions and speech become more moderate about me and my girlfriends, etc. Because his speech and thoughts about physical love and connectedness are often so impure and even primitive that the feeling of shame is not spared to me, although we only know such feelings from earlier lore. What Jacobus allows himself in this relationship, however, is something so new and primitive for me that it took me almost 2 years to talk to you about it. That an Earth human can think and speak so impurely in this regard is an abomination to me. It is so impure and unclean that one should fundamentally not talk about it. The constant repetition of the same concerns, however, nevertheless requires these remarks.
I am very sorry, girl. I have told him all this many times before, but his damn stubbornness is so great that he just laughs at it and appears to be a hero. That damn jerk, I will have to read him the riot act again when the time comes. I will give him a girl, please, do not do that.
have lost control, sorry.
You should not apologize, and you need even less to cry.
It hurts me very much that Jacobus does not care about the true things and values.
Little child, girl, come on. Do not be sad now. This lousy jerk may one day understand.
Sure, maybe, but
There is no but. Sooner or later, he will have to learn it, even if it is going to be when he's done something damned shitty. But he will learn.
Sure, but a malicious event is already slowly pushing its way towards him, which he can only avert when he finally lets himself be instructed.
I have told him that many times before, but it is useless. In his cursed stubbornness, he simply thinks he knows better. But is it really so far that these things are about to happen?
Unfortunately, yes.
Well, I will put the jerk through his paces again when the time comes.
It would only be to his own advantage.
Okay, girl, now please do not be sad anymore. Please tell me what this could be, or what it is. When Manara and Alina were here on the 6th of July, I took a lot of pictures of the ray gun and the tree that was shot through. Afterwards, first, namely on the slides, we made some quite strange observations. First of all, there was Jacobus's tractor photographed in different pictures, although at that time it was not in the place, but in Wheeler. In second and third place were the shed and the dwelling house respectively, the part of the barn and the wooden gate next to it. The passage and the trees, etc., so crooked on the pictures as if the film had been damaged by heat and had caused distortions. But this is not the case, because the films are completely in order. Could it therefore perhaps be possible that these things were caused by the protective shield that Manara had placed around the area from the ship? I also wanted to ask you again what the High Council had to say about Jacobus's name, if we write it with a C instead of a K.
6th of July, 1977, 1639 Hers. The distortion caused by the protective screen is very good visible in the upper right corner of the picture at the house. Compared to the vertical wall of the shed on the left of the picture, the corner of the house appears to be tilted to the right by about 5 degrees, which was not the case in reality. Photo, Manara. July 1934 for Hers. In this picture, the whole background up to the garage is inside the protective screen, which is why no distortions can be seen. Instead, the tractor that was in Wheeler at the time of the photo is visible on the right behind Billy, half hidden by bushes. Photo, Manara.
The reference of your first question could not only be so, because it really was so. Manara erected the protective shield so that which you mentioned could come about, to explain to you, and of course to all the others in your group, what we can do with the protective shields. The explanation for the processes is very simple. The appearance of the tractor on the film is an as yet unknown form of visualization of all matter by a type of infrared radiation, as yet unknown. Probably the earthly science is so far along that it knows of the infrared light and many of its application possibilities, so for example such as making any matter visible which has already been removed hours or days before from its location to be photographed. The relevant and previous earthly technique is usually only able to capture shadow outlines, while our technique is so far developed that an object is reproduced in all its details and true to nature. The tilting, as you call it, of the buildings is quite simply due to the fact that everything that is not in the immediate range of radiation appears blurred or distorted, while in the process with the tractor, the former location was in the immediate range of the radiation. Concerning your question about Jacobus, the High Council declared that the name would also do justice to the required values with a C written on it.
Aha, I understand all that once again. So that is clear. Then now another question, namely concerning the demonstration you promised. What about it? Is it to be expected in the near future?
That lies entirely up to Quetzal's decision. For the time being, I am not yet supposed to initiate anything in this regard, but to adopt a wait-and-see attitude.
But why is that?
I was afraid of this question, and if it were possible, I do not want to talk about it.
Why is that?
Because it would be unpleasant news for some of your group members.
Shall we play cat and mouse? I think these things should also be brought up, because maybe they could be quite useful.
Maybe that is of correctness. Well, then I want to give the explanation. For some members of the group, the registration apparatuses have recorded that the appearance of our ships or demonstrations carried out, or to be carried out, by us are evaluated in such a manner that they serve to brighten up and loosen things up, but on the other hand they also find an evaluation of privilege and sensation. The actual consciousness-based matters of learning and the evidence of our existence are pushed into the background, which in the last few months has partly contributed to the disharmony. Under these perspectives, no demonstration can take place for the time being, which Quetzal has decided to do. So such a demonstration will be postponed to a later date, since it will then also be divided into different demonstration phases with only smaller observation groups. This is partly because more and more steps have been taken by various departments of your army to monitor you in particular, and under certain circumstances they hope, erroneously, to get hold of us. This special part is also the reason why we have not recently ordered you out to our contacts, but have brought you directly into our ships through transmitters. In the future, the matter about our contacts will change again from time to time, the type of the contact as well as the respective location. We have to do this because the near and far surroundings of the center are monitored too much by certain army officers. With regard to the members of the group, who now think of our appearance as a visual privilege, etc., I would like to explain that we are in no wise averse to releasing our ships to their eyes in demonstrations, but not for reasons of privilege or sensation, but simply because we feel joyful about their own joy, and because we would like to promote joy in all of them in dear solidarity when they can observe us at demonstrations or otherwise. But that gives nobody the right to demand that as a right. How these concerns will develop in the near future, that will be the results of the registry apparatus, after which Quetzal will make his decision. Until then, however, at least another 3 months will pass if he does not allow himself to make an exception.
It is a pity, but somehow I have already seen that coming, because some certain remarks from some group members have come up to me. Too bad, but I think Quetzal's decision is probably the right one.
I am very sorry too, but I do not want to evade Quetzal's determinations or even act against them.
That is not required of you either, which I suppose I may say on behalf of everyone.
I thank you.
You with your eternal thanks for something self-evident. What about the two who are supposed to take over the task in the center? You once told me that Amata had been chosen for the women and girls, but you did not tell me anything about the men.
Amata was chosen, as you correctly mention, but there should also be a suitable person on the male side. After a discussion with Father and Quetzal, we decided that Jacobus should take over this task for the male part. On the other hand, both need representation, which can also only be recruited by residents of the center. Since there will be no other permanent residents in the center for the time being, your wife will be responsible for the female part and you for the male part, but you will find relief from this task as soon as the problem can be solved elsewhere. Furthermore, the task of the familiarization into the meditation in the Sohar Center will also fall to you since this is necessary. The unfamiliarity of absolute loneliness and absolute silence, which all are not used to, could otherwise lead to shocks and other unpleasant things, as I have already explained to you earlier. So it will be necessary for you to be present in the Sohar Center mainly at the beginning and the next following times, with one or the other as a calming factor, and for possible help in case of silence and seclusion distress.
You already explained that to me, but you also know that this can lead to quite unpleasant things.
I do not understand.
You know, if I have to be down there with a man at first, that is still possible, you know? We live here in a messed up world, because the Earth human sometimes thinks a little strangely. But if I now...
I understand, unfortunately. Sure, it will be connected with problems that you can really solve. Everybody should know you so well by now that they should place their trust in you and know that you are only focused on your mission in the whole enterprise, without having any thoughts that could have a devastating effect on everything. I would very much like to free you from this task, but not a single analysis has shown that there is an appropriate and suitable power person with all the necessary qualities and the necessary ability in even the half-value sense in your or your wider environment that could take on this extremely trustworthy task. Where character traits would allow this, there is a lack of the necessary cognitions, ability, and knowledge.
All that remains is to bite the bullet.
Sure, because you prepared yourself for it. Just thinking about your concerns, I see that other difficulties may arise, so you must be very careful to exercise appropriate control over everything, after which thoughts and actions cannot Ausartung get very badly out of control of the good human nature.
I have been thinking about that for a long time, and that is why I have been rolling over problems. Maybe it would be very good if Ta, Quetzal, and you and I could work through these problems together. I have certain ideas about how I could exercise this control, but unfortunately, I do not know if that is possible. It would therefore be very dear to me if you could talk to yours once about it and present my wish.
That is what I want to do, because your idea for such a conversation corresponds completely to my sense.
By the way, I now know why Ptah gave me a very specific reason for the center.
It could not remain hidden from you.
The only reason I came across it was because I wanted to use the compass to swing the exact north direction.
I already told you that it could not remain hidden from you. The only reason we did not want to tell you about it was because you were able to gather some valuable insights through your own initiative.
I actually found out some things. For example, why everything down here in the Sohar Center becomes and is much more pronounced than it usually is. Somehow, however, it is incomprehensible to many that the compass needle shows two different north directions within 1 meter of horizontal displacement.
You should not officially spread these concerns yet, because so-called experts would accuse you of fraud and deception again, although a very strong north deviation actually exists, and the compass needle in reality shows the old and the new location of the magnetic positive pole of the Earth, at least at present, but this will correct itself in 2 decades. The pole of the Sohar Center points very precisely to the old magnetic pole, which is also valid at present, while the compass needle at the house points to the new positive pole of the Earth, namely in the direction of Greenland, where this magnetic pole is now located.
But you have researched these things very thoroughly.
That was also our task, because for the entire center, this value of the things so present is of important significance, as you know.
The actual value, however, I recognized only by sounding out the different poles. Only then did I realize that I was able to recognize the real and also all correlations to a great extent.
That was to be expected from you.
You do me too much credit, but the findings were interesting after all. I also got a glimpse of why so many telemeter disks were pulling away over the center because of the faceted trajectories of the magnetic currents.
That is also correct. And if you are talking about it right now, you should really refrain from your pranks in the future and not take the discs off course at every opportunity you get. Although our technicians have now equipped them with special track stabilizers that work automatically when the corrective illumination is switched off by thought influences, these stabilizers are not yet so perfected that they are fully functional.
And what about your technology?
The prepared track stabilizers of this form have only been developed since then, since you have been constantly driving the discs off course with your funny pranks. We were not aware of any problems about this before, which is why a new invention first had to be made, which is not yet fully developed at the present time, but which will be soon.
Not much can happen if I let the little things dance a little across the sky, can it? Or do the little apparatuses suddenly flash down?
They cannot crash, at least not ours, but there is a danger that they will collide if they suddenly stray from the prescribed path and fall into the trajectory of another.
It will not be that bad, because then they just dissolve, as you once said.
Sure, but that only applies to our own registering discs. Those of the other participants would crash.
But it is still kind of fun to direct the things a bit.
I know you, like every human life form, need the constant testing of your powers of consciousness, but please use them elsewhere, only not directly on our telemeter discs.
I will make an effort, but I cannot promise anything.
You are simply incorrigible in certain things.
Ha, that is what I think, and I am even happy about it. You know, sometimes one is really driven to make some jokes and to smile about it secretly. And then it is a lot of fun to see that others cannot understand the fun as such, because they do not recognize the connections.
This is typical of you. But now the fun aside, for some months now, all the members of the group have been waiting for some valuable words from me, which I would now like to give to them at this time, because they have gone through the hardest strains and become a little freer again, according to which they can truly also understand my words. In every single one of you, except in the dishonest and traitorous, who are still in the group doing their mischief, the longing for certainty flares indelibly, especially for the certainty of your being and continuing far beyond your earthly passing away, which you call death. This...
Sorry if I interrupt you. It seems to me that you speak quite rashly, for I am absolutely clear and conscious, with all certainty of what my being and continuing is, far beyond my earthly existence, after my passing in truthfulness. So why come?
You misunderstood me. I am not speaking for you, but for your group members.
Then excuse me. Keep going then, please.
So then, I speak therefore for the group members. Yes, this certainty can truly become apparent to each individual if each individual defeats the ego, for in truth, it is only the mist of the ego that prevents the prospect of the realm of true life, of the spiritual, beyond the transformation of becoming and passing away. This is because the ego, the I, attaches too much importance to its own well-being, because in most people it develops further to egoism. Thus, doubts and uncertainties hang over the individual as well as over the entire humankind of the earth, like heavy thunderclouds from which thunder and lightning break unpredictably for the earth human called into existence by egoism and materialism and all other unworthy things to which he or she has become subject and by which he or she is imprisoned. To fight this shall be one of your first recommendations, for only when, through the knowledge of the truth, the Son of the Love, embodying the manifestation of the Spirit of the Life, rises up on the horizon of one's psyche, thereby driving away the storm clouds, will one be able to perceive how close they really are to certainty and how unfounded their fear and anxiety was. Unfortunately, for many human beings, only the death of their physical body means the beginning of their actual life, and thus the gradual resurgence of their inner Sohar. In the book Talmud Emmanuel, Sohar, aka Zohar, is defined as the radiant splendor of spiritual creational energy when, however, the next incarnation takes place, The same can apply again in the new life through a further ignorance if an improvement in life was not laboriously struggled for and worked for by the preceding personality. Only through a truly inner rebirth will the darkness of absolute or semi-lightlessness within an earthly existence be ended, when the light of the inner being becomes visible to you and the action of the consciousness of life no longer appears to you only as a dull fate, which you yourselves in truth create in deformity. But when at last the Sohar shines in you, then you recognize the invisible, the might of the spirit and of the consciousness, as well as their unlimited power as the true workings, while the visible workings already disappear again as a shadow, but remain as a permanent and invigorating memory in order to continue to work and to be evolutionarily serviceable. It is still the case with many of you that behind all love and wanting to be loving lurks naked fear. Fear of the end of love, fear of the passing away of a loved one, fear of being separated and reunited, and above all, fear of changing to the beyond from this world. These fears are joined by that of pain, originating from ignorance and erroneous teachings, that all life always falls victim to death and evermore lives on in another life in which it is destroyed and must be destroyed in order to exist. A terrible thought, truly, but it is only of earthly human nature, arising from the incomprehension of the truthly truth, for all life lives out of the other life. That is true so far, but life does not murder other life in order to be able to exist and live itself. One is coordinated with the other, and one helps the other to live, in order to be again positioned in the passing away at its given time, when it has fulfilled its time and its task. Life is not a progressive sacrifice and becoming sacrificed, as the earth human mistakenly accepts it and is bolstered in it through corresponding erroneous teachings. Rather, it is in truth only a becoming and passing away in the sense of the constantly advancing evolution, and purely in the sense of the creational rules, recommendations and laws to which creation itself is in every respect classified. So it is only a matter of many great times of rebirth and renewal in the wheel of passing away and becoming. Thus the passing away, the death, reaches into the heart of life, but likewise the life, the becoming, reaches deep down into the heart of death, whereby two realms complete each other, which take over each other simultaneously and gradually bring each other to cognition. Life does not strive for the overcoming of a single passing away death, but for the overcoming of the passing away and becoming in general via evolution. It works towards the upward development of everything that has become, towards that which is imperishable in the innermost of innumerable myriads of life forms and works, towards the ultimate goal of all creations, towards the creation, towards universal consciousness. The actual meaning of life in the material realm is simply that, self-defeat of the always wanting to dominate ego, and the following evolution in the totality of the consciousness and of the spirit. To defeat oneself therefore means that you should help your highest self to victory in order to recognize an even higher self, namely the creation's self, into which you will awaken through even higher evolution. Sure, it is one of the most difficult tasks of your life, but it is also the most beautiful, the most valuable, and the most productive. For behind this task awaits for you the supreme certainty of your all-great life being beyond all external and physical forms of existence. Since your spirit of life in you is a part of the spiritual energy of creation, it is necessary to reflect on this creational root of your being in order to unite yourselves through true internalization with the all-great time within yourselves. For to be one with the spirit of life in yourselves, with the part of creation in yourselves, means to become absolutely free, so also free from the fear of passing away, of death. To be one with the part of creation's energy in yourself also means to recognize your other ego behind your outer ego, namely the creational self. It is certainly the greatest, for the still inwardly unprepared ones, but truly the most terrifying thing that can happen to a human being, namely to truly see and recognize himself or herself, his or her innate ego, which reaches beyond all spheres and boundaries and floats beyond all senses into the all-great time and humanly incomprehensible realms of the creation. But the one who unites himself or herself with the part piece of creation within himself or herself, with the spirit, solves at the same time the riddle of the passing away, of death, which is so frightening for the human being, and yet truthfully harmless, if he or she recognizes death as only the other side of life, which means nothing else than sleep in the physical realm, which replaces the wakefulness of the day. Only human irrationality, ignorance, and blindness believe that sleep is the darker side of life, which is why it is the same in reference to death. Of course, many other factors are reflected in the fear of death, but it would be absurd to mention them all. All that remains to be explained to you is, what the life-abandoned human body is only imperfectly able to unravel, the part of creation in you is able to reveal with all clarity and truth, namely the certainty of your absolute duration in the all-great timeliness. You should look unswervingly to the tasks of your life on the earth, in the knowledge that on this side the realms of coarse matter rule, and in the other world the realms of fine matter rule, but that the divided realms of this side and the other side, the other world, are a single realm, present in the same place, but dimensioned differently and therefore not in the same period. Of course, it seems that the total sum of misery and suffering on planet Earth is much greater than that of joy and happiness. But this is only a fallacy on your part, which your erroneous teachings, handed down and implanted by yourselves, are of the confused and dangerous view that this is, in fact, so. Not at all, however, for need and suffering, as well as joy and happiness, are always in balance in their measures. Through your wrong thinking alone you overestimate. Register and keep in constant remembrance need and suffering, while in joy and happiness you all too quickly forget the events and you lose the memory of them. For you have not yet learned to move in balance in these matters and to register negative as well as positive things in equal measure and to preserve them as memories. Nevertheless, you are able to see and recognize the human being's destiny if you are able to change conditions and establish an island of sohar and security from out of the shores of darkness. You need not disturb and worry about the duration of time, for millions and billions of years may still fall into the past before the realization of the highest goal. Many millions and billions of years are still devoted to you and are given to you to smooth out again the creation-related face of your creational homeworld, which has been rutted by you. But you must now be devoted to the change presented to you to grasp the goal of the evolution, to truly grasp, evaluate, and establish the goal of the helpful hand and the knowledge material presented to you.
Girl, that was a good speech, simply wonderful. I have not heard you speak like that for a long time. You are simply a power.
Your face is so strangely changed and your feelings are in turmoil.
Do not worry, girl. I am simply moved by your words. They did me so much good. Thank you very much for that.
The thanks are on my side because I am very happy that I was able to convey a joyful mood to you and that I see you so moved, although the words were not meant for you, but for your group members.
You know, it is suddenly funny to me. At last, I have heard again words whose knowledge is well known to me, but which have been offered so excellently, with so much knowledge and understanding that I could savor them properly. Thank you very much for that.
I know you miss such conversations very much. In the future, I will try to entertain myself here and there with you mentally in this form.
Very gladly, and thank you for that. But do you think that you can always call things by their name so that I can write them down? You know, sometimes I find it hard to find the right expressions when I have to retranslate the symbol images.
You shall not write down these thought conversations with you that I have promised you, for in these times and on these occasions I would like to talk with you about greater matters that cannot yet be understood by the earth humans of the present time.
Then I feel reassured. Many thanks. Now, can I maybe talk to you for about 15 minutes about some things that I want to keep between us?
Certainly, but what concerns do you have?
I do not want them written.
Certainly, I will finish the reporting at this point.
As always, you are very sweet. Many thanks.